Creative Chats podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artist makers and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. I'd love to invite you to stop by dailycreativehabit.com. I have created all sorts of resources for you because I truly believe that when you create, we all win. So I want to see as many of you stepping into your creativity fully, closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I want to help you do that. So I've created resources like the Daily Creative Habit Journal. I've written a book, Make Fun a Habit. I have all sorts of free resources like this podcast and a Facebook group called Daily Creative Habit. Also, the paid membership for Daily Creative Habit, where we get together with like-minded creators, all pushing in the same direction, encouraging each other, and saying we're going to show up every single day to create something to get our work out there into the world. So if you would like to be a part of any of those things, again, stop by dailycreativehabit.com or simply visit my website, which is mikebrennan.me. Hey friends, I am back from Orlando, Florida, where I was speaking and live event sketching at The Thing conference. And you know that I've spoken about that. Terry Weaver was on this podcast a few episodes ago. We were talking about this event. If you've hung around here any length of time, you know that I mention this Thing event and community often because, quite frankly, it's where I go to connect and to learn and to grow and also to participate. And so I thought, being that I'm fresh back from this event, why not give some insights, some tips into how you can maximize the next event that you may find yourself at? So the following are 7 tips that you can employ the next time you're at an event or a conference. And, I want you to think about why you're going to this event. What is it that you're hoping to get out of it? Is it personal connection? Is it business and industry insights? Is it network building? You might be going for even all those reasons and more, but I want you to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what it is that you're hoping to attain by attending these events. And this will really help you focus your time as well as your energy. So the first thing I want to suggest that you do is honestly research attendees and speakers. So do your research. That's number one. And this is extremely helpful because you can help front load the event so that way you're not getting to the event and then trying to figure out who's who and what you might have in common with some people or who you may really want to approach and have a conversation with or connect with. Typically, when a speaker is on stage, as soon as they come off stage, they are mobbed with people because they're the ones who just got all the attention. And so it can be very difficult to fight the crowd and get some time that is more than just maybe a hello or a handshake or doesn't really eat up a lot of your time waiting in line to speak to this individual. So why not actually do your research in advance? Know who these speakers are, know the people that you think you want to connect with, as well as the attendees, and make a plan. You can do this very easily by looking on social media platforms, seeing who is posting about attending the events, speaking at the events, look at hashtags, look at who is tagged in posts from the event planner or organizer. Typically, these things are shared well in advance so that even a week or two before the event, you can still do this and maximize your time as soon as you get there. So this way, again, you've done your research, you kind of have a plan, you know a little bit of who's who, and so this way you're not starting at zero as soon as you walk in the door. And this works especially well if you are somebody who's introverted and you're feeling, I don't know if I feel comfortable approaching people. I don't know how to start a conversation that's going to lead to a successful interaction. and the outcome perhaps that you're hoping, this is a great way because you can, do this via DMs or comments on social media, a quick email if that seems appropriate. But you can do it and kind of takes the pressure off a little bit. So make sure, do your research, know who the attendees are, know who the speakers are, know who the event organizers are, because these are the people who have set the table for you as you come to these events, and you can kind of preemptively engage in discussions and make it easier so that it kind of breaks the ice once you're in person. So that was number one, do your research on attendees and speakers. Number two, my suggestion is plan some micro meetings in advance. And you might be thinking, well, I'm not really sure where the venue is at, what's available. Some of those things, obviously, you can do some research on that as well to find out if there's a coffee shop nearby, or even if it's in a hotel, the hotel lobby, or sometimes, they have spots on site that are very easy for you to have a quick meeting. And that's the thing here. I've said micro meetings, and you plan these in advance. And what you do is you reach out before the event, kind of like as I mentioned before, and you say, maybe there's 3 to 5 brief coffee chats or meetups that you want to have. And maybe it's between the sessions. Maybe there is at the event time blocks that they build in for just that connection. They know that it's not all about sitting in your seat, absorbing information that's given to you from the stage. A good event planner also knows that it's about the connections that happen in the hallways. It's about the meeting that happens of the people who are next to you, and you have the ability to connect as you're going for coffee that they provide, or maybe some snacks or some other things that are part of the event itself. And keep this brief. Again, these are micro meetings. Think, even if it's 10 minutes over coffee, this can lead to a valuable connection, because perhaps you can get at least planting the seed of something that you can talk about at greater length later on. Make the connection point. That's the important thing. And ideally, you want to organize this so that you're ready to move in and out of these things, and that you don't simply just wait for spontaneity, because, sometimes things don't go as you plan. Sometimes there's not as much time as you might think there would be. Schedules run behind, and sometimes schedules get rearranged on the fly. And so what you may have been thinking, I'll just kind of wing it, maybe things shift. And so just be flexible, do as much planning and as much research as you can, and connecting beforehand, so that when you get there, you have these, 3 to 5 brief micro meetings that you can set up for yourself so that you can maximize your time there. And, you might even want to think about grabbing a breakfast with somebody that's real casual before the event starts on a certain morning, and, discuss a specific topic. That's the other thing I want to say is make sure that these meetings, they're not just simply touch points where you don't have something to say, you don't have something to interact around, because you don't want to waste somebody's time, nor your own. And so I always think about, there is the old Saturday Night Live skit, and it was Chris Farley, and he would meet, a celebrity or something in the skit on Saturday Night Live, and he would always be like, hey, remember that time you did that thing? Like, that was really cool. That was really awesome. And the celebrity's like, yeah, right. And then Chris Farley would be like, yeah, that was so cool. And it was like he wasn't really saying anything, and he was looking to connect, but he just made a really awkward moment for both people. So avoid that. Don't go into these micro meetings just saying, hey, how much you admire somebody, and that's it. Have some discussion points, have some questions and things. And, again, try to plan this ahead, but also be open to spontaneity. So that was number 2, plan micro meetings in advance. Number 3, pack the essentials and think ahead. And this is really more about what are you bringing with you that's going to help you connect while you're there. So interestingly enough, depending upon the industry and depending upon the event, business cards are still a very big thing. Now, I know sometimes people think, business cards, you get a whole bunch of them and it just kind of feels, slimy, where somebody goes to shake your hand and there's a business card in it, and nobody likes those experiences, and nobody wants more clutter and more things that they're just going to throw away. You want to make sure you're using these strategically. And, it's funny because I shied away from having physical business cards for a while, but I've actually just returned to them because, there are a host of digital business cards and methods where you can scan something or hold your phone to somebody else's and it shares information, or you send somebody to a website and it downloads your profile. Any number of those things are available, and they're still great. They're still great methods. But somebody actually told me recently, they made a good point. They said, our phones are so cluttered, and it's hard for us to find things sometimes. Like if you think about your camera roll, if you take as many photos as I do, there is, you can really scroll for a while trying to look for something and locate something. It's not quite easily accessible. Things get buried easily, is what I'm saying. And so the same thing can happen with your contact information in somebody's phone. It goes into their contact system, whatever that is, or their CRM type thing where they're collecting that data from people. And sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind, unless somebody's actively searching for something. And a business card can be something that someone can actually hold and look at. And it can be that physical reminder in a very digital world that, I need to connect with that person. That's right. So I would suggest have business cards to bring with you, and yes, have a QR code on it that brings it to your website or wherever it is that you want to send people, but also have your information on that card as well. Don't just simply have a QR code, because sometimes things happen. Phones don't work right, cameras, there are glitches. You want to make sure that you hand somebody something that even if the QR code, doesn't work the way it's supposed to, there's, a tech glitch, somebody still has your information, still has a way to contact you. And this is something that I think is done very easily if you're going to make a card anyway. Just be sure that you have multiple ways that people can access your information. And sometimes people leave the backside of a card blank because if someone else doesn't have a card with them, doesn't have information, you can simply hand them another one of yours, flip it over, hand them a pen, and ask them to write their information and then receive it back so that you have a way to get in touch with them as well. It's not simply just one-sided where you're handing out your information and then kind of hoping that someone follows up. That's not a really great strategy. Another thing you want to make sure you bring, and this probably sounds like a no-brainer, but a portable charger, because most likely your phone is going to be really active. And you want to make sure that if you're having these connections and they're more towards the evening and you've been on your phone a lot, that you don't miss out on opportunities to actually collect this information. I also want to make note of, there is an app called Self-Tact, and Cabrina, who has been on this podcast before, very good friend of mine, she has talked about this. She introduced this app to me. I know the guy who created this app, Arjun, and I believe it is for Apple and Android, and it is, again, Self-Tact. And the whole idea of this app is that you ask somebody to take a selfie with you, and it takes the selfie, and then it creates a opportunity for someone to fill in their information, whatever they're comfortable with. and it sends that information to you. It saves it in the app itself. It drops a pin so you can kind of look at where you met people. And so if you wanted to go according to the location, you remembered where a certain event was, you could look that up, and it's pretty cool. They're always adding features to it. And the really cool thing is that as soon as you take that selfie with somebody, you have them fill in their information, you can immediately send them either an email or a text message with your photo that you just took and your information, and an invitation for them to download Self-Tact as well. So it's a great tool, and most people engage with that. Some people have been a little skittish about taking some selfies or filling in certain information, which I understand, because if a complete stranger's walking up to them and they feel like, I don't really know who you are, a business card might be a little less threatening. So I would suggest have multiple ways that you would connect with somebody, basically. Also have a small notebook that you can jot down some, conversation highlights, or use the notes section in your phone, just because this is a valuable way for you to follow up. Make notes for yourself in the moment, because you won't remember later. As much as you think you will, trust me, you'll end up with a bunch of fragments of statements or half names or half information, and you won't really be able to do anything with it after the event is over and you're trying to piece things together unsuccessfully. You may also want to make sure that if you use LinkedIn, share that information with someone for more of a professional, connection, and personal websites. Make sure that all that stuff is really up to date as well, because just as you've been doing some research and you've been looking at people to see who they are and what's happening, people will most likely be doing that for you as well, as long as they know you're attending. And so it's really important for you to have all those things aligned, and make sure you have the same photo across all the platforms. Make sure you have the same information. It just makes it a lot easier, because if someone is finding you on multiple social platforms, they know that that's you. Take the guesswork out, and make it easy for people to connect with you. So that's number 3, is pack the essentials and think ahead. Number 4, attend a workshop or a small group session. And I know this might be sounding like, well, of course I would do that, because if this is part of the event or conference, why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I take advantage of all the things that are being offered? But if you've been to a number of events, you know it can be pretty exhausting sometimes, because you're going from morning till night, and there's a lot of peopling, and there's a lot of things, there's a lot of information, and sometimes you can feel like, I just need to step away. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes you do need to do that. But also, don't underestimate the smaller workshops and breakout sessions, because sometimes they offer a more relaxed environment, a smaller environment, where you can actually connect and build some relationships and your network in that environment a lot easier than you can in the big session. And so don't underestimate the power of attending those and participating in those, because that can help you be seen and heard in a way that honestly won't happen in a bigger session. So that was number 4, attend workshops and small group sessions. Number 5, this may, again, sound like a no-brainer, but ask good questions. When you're engaging with people, especially in these one-on-one micro meetings, or you're networking in the hallway, you're chatting with people wherever you encounter them, ask good questions. Like, be curious about people, authentically curious, because that makes conversations much more memorable. And if you just stay on something that seems to be a surface level topic, you might not get to something that may be a deeper connection and something that will make you memorable to that person and them to you. Pay attention to those things, because even sometimes you have a connection around something that has nothing to do with the session you were just in, or maybe the information that's being shared. during the event, but perhaps, maybe you complimented somebody's, shoes or their glasses. I get this a lot, and so does Cabrina, because we have these brightly colored glasses. I have these glasses called Pair Eyewear, where you can basically swap out the top frames. So I have different colors that I can wear, and it's the same prescription, same base of the glasses. And so because of that, a lot of times people are like, oh, wow, that's really cool. I really love your glasses. And that little statement opens up something where I can tell them about that. I can show them because I take the top frame off, and they're like, that's pretty amazing. That's cool. And they may say, I really love color too, or I really love that color, or it just breaks the ice. And then it helps us go to something else, because typically that's just, again, a jumping point. And it also helps them remember me, because they're like, oh, you're the guy with the really loud colored glasses. And so that, again, is something that becomes a memorable moment, and something where somebody sees me later on, they remember that they met me, as opposed to me just kind of being one among many people, and just kind of a passing thought, if you will. And so do what you can to be curious about people, ask good questions, have great conversations with people, and, if you can, wear something or have something on you that, or talk about something that makes you a little bit more memorable, so that you make that connection. So that was ask good questions. That was number 5. Number 6, take advantage of social events and hallway moments. Like during the event, there will most likely be some kind of either after party or a crowd participation portion, or even, again, if it's breaks and you're having snacks in the hallway or coffee time, whatever that looks like for these events, take advantage of those. Don't just simply sneak away and check your email or drop into some work mode things that you have to do. Don't simply just check out and go, again, back to your room for hours on end. Like, you've invested in being at this event. And so, yes, sometimes we need to protect our energy, and yes, there are times when we need to step away. But again, maximize this for all it's worth, because you've paid. You're there. You're among people who you could be one relationship away from something completely changing, or unlocking something that you've been trying to solve for a really long time. And so that person could be in that room or in that hallway, and they won't connect with you if you're not there. And so do what you can to utilize that networking time that happens in the hallways, in the coffee lines, even on social media, as people are posting about the event. Comment, follow, like, share, engage, because those will, again, add up to memorable moments and put some relational currency in the bank, if you will. And be open to spontaneous conversations, the things that you haven't planned. Sometimes things happen and it's just kind of serendipity. Be open to those things. Don't think so closed-minded about here's what the schedule is and here's the things I've planned and here's what I want and here's, take your eyes off of you for a little bit and also look around the room and see what happens in spontaneous moments. Be open to that and invite that. Just even with your face, right? Smile, make eye contact, simple things like that. It goes a long way, but you'd be surprised at how many people actually don't do that. So, friendly introductions, compliments, all this can be something that can start a conversation and can lead to a deeper connection and memorable moment. So that was 6. Take advantage of the social events and the hallway moments and social media. All that stuff is there for you to lean in. And so that brings us to number 7. The final tip is follow up with purpose. Now, again, this isn't necessarily at the event, but this is something that happens after the event, when you get home. And so, honestly, today was a day for me to follow up. I met many new people, and I had conversations about some people being on the podcast as guests. I had conversations about being on their podcasts. I had connections just about some other things that aren't necessarily related to any of those things. But I want to make sure that I follow up on conversations I had, or if I promised them something, if I mentioned something, I want to make sure that I make good on that. And it's easy in the moment when everybody's at the conference or event to be talking about things, a lot of things, and then things that just get lost in the shuffle. And it's natural and normal. People go home, they re-enter real life, and things get forgotten, and newer priorities take place. And then before you know it, a potential connection that you had that could have developed into something more meaningful, suddenly it gets forgotten. And so following up with purpose helps you to be sure that what you've invested in the time during the event, you can go home and take the right next steps. So, follow up with a quick message, which is great. But, sometimes it's taking an extra step. Maybe there's a related article to something you've discussed, and you come across that and you want to send that to them just as further information on the conversation that you had. It also shows that, you were paying attention, that you were invested in the conversation, and you think this would be something that's helpful for someone. I mean, put yourself in their shoes too. What is it that you would love somebody to send you? Or what's the information that you would love someone to connect with you around after an event? What would be helpful? And what would help further the conversation? Reciprocate that. And connect them with someone else that you know. Be a connector. I can't tell you how many times people have been so appreciative when, if they've been on my podcast and I say, hey, are you looking for other podcasts to be on? And I mention, several different people that I know who have podcasts, and I obviously check with them as well. And if they're like, yeah, I'm looking for some new guests, then I make the introduction. And I say, hey, I want to make this this connection for you guys because I think that this would be a good fit for both of you. It's a win-win. And people really appreciate that. They appreciate the referrals. Or maybe it's somebody to help on a certain project. The conversation turned to them trying to finish a project, and there was a need that arose, and they don't know somebody who, does websites, or they need somebody who is a copywriter, or they need someone who, is an illustrator, designer, something, and someone who can help them with their project. That adds a tremendous amount of value and increases your chance of a meaningful connection and conversation when you have something like that to offer, because then you're invested in helping them. It's not simply about what you can get from them, but it's also about what you're giving. And that takes following up with purpose and on purpose. So that was our last one. Really quickly, I'll recap. So, number 1, do your research on attendees and speakers. Number 2, plan these micro meetings in advance. Number 3, pack the essentials and think ahead. Number 4, attend workshops and small group sessions. Number 5, ask good questions. 6, take advantage of social events and the hallway moments. And 7, follow up with purpose. And I think if you start to employ these tips when you're at an event or a conference, you will start to see that there are more connections that last a lot longer than just the length of the event. And perhaps, again, someone's in that room that can help you unlock the next level that you need to get to in whatever it is that you're trying to do. So put them into play. Let me know how it goes. And if you have other tips that, because this, of course, isn't an exhaustive list, but if you have other things that you do that you've found helpful, feel free to send me a message and let me know, because I would love to include that as well as I continue to share these tips out to people. And again, we all win that way, right? And maybe that's even a way where you start to connect with me and have a meaningful conversation with me, is by reaching out, saying you've heard this podcast and you have something else that you would love to just lend to the conversation that you think would be beneficial to everybody. I totally welcome that, and I think that would be an amazing thing. So feel free to do that. You can always shoot me a message from my website, mikebrennan.me. There's a contact form there, and that would be really awesome, and I welcome that. So apologize for my voice. It's getting a little scratchy, and that's also what happens when you're at these events, unfortunately. Sometimes you lose your voice, or you're kind of getting a little scratchy because you spend so much time talking, and sometimes in these environments where you're projecting your voice over the crowd. And so, especially for me, as I was speaking at 2 events this past week, amazing times, amazing relationships that were formed, new connections and friends, and I came home very full. So be sure to employ these tips and tactics next time that you go to a conference or event, and I can't wait to hear about some of your experiences and tips. So until next time, I always end these episodes with you saying, go create something. Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.